Welcome, Game Chasers everywhere, to episode 22 of the Collecting Confidant with your host, GunstarHero. And I'm back this week with something new. We're going to try to expand on the formula of the show, and believe me, it's been working great so far, and thank you to all the new subscribers. It's been a lot of fun, but what I've been doing thus far, if you've noticed, is kind of like a mix of reviews and previews with a specific highlight on one particular title from week to week, which is great in some respects, but kind of limiting in others because myself, being a normal working person like most of you, I have like 2 jobs, so the idea of having to review a game in a week kind of limits how long the game tends to be. So I think you've noticed that I've been reviewing a lot of shorter games where I'd like to kind of expand my horizons and start delving into some other titles. So I think what I'll do from now on is take however long it takes me to do the review, come out with it when it's ready, and in the meantime, I'm going to try a new format, a new show called the Solar Report. And Solar, S-O-L-A-R, stands for the State of Limited Print and Retail. So essentially what's going to happen is kind of an expansion of my preview episodes where instead of focusing specifically on one title and doing like a deep dive, which I still will do from time to time, for example, when games like Cowabunga Collection come out where they're pretty big and have a lot of information to go over, I will still do those single title preview episodes. But when there's other titles that maybe I don't know so much about, or there's only some scant details, I'm going to compile them into like a list of games I'll cover. So today, I'm going to be covering 3 different titles that are currently available for pre-order via different boutique websites. We'll go over all of those and get a better idea of what's out there. The first title we're going to get into is from Atooi, one of my personal favorites. It's Mutant Mudds Collection, which finally got a Switch release back in 2017 and is getting re-released again physically for the Switch. This originally was released on a physical format back in 2018 from Super Rare Games, and it sold out pretty quickly, but now Limited Run Games is going to be putting out another run of this on Tuesday, August 23rd at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It'll be limited to 1,500 copies, and will be going for $29.99 US. Now, if you can't make it to your computer and, jam on that F5 refresh button prior to 12 p.m. like you used to do back on Fridays, don't fret. Apparently, Amazon.com is also going to be putting out another cover variant of both this and the next game we're talking about, Xeodrifter, on the same day. Details are a bit scant at this point, but it is an open pre-order, so you will get a chance to get this copy even if you miss out on Limited Run. So let's get into the Mutant Mudds Collection, which came out exclusively for the Nintendo Switch. Includes 3 games, the first game being the immortal Mutant Mudds Deluxe. So Mutant Mudds Deluxe originally started out life in 2012 as Mutant Mudds on the 3DS, and what better platform to be on it than the 3DS, because this game is all about 3 dimensions. Even though it's a 2D retro style platform, and in fact, it's described as a 12-bit action platformer because it's somewhere halfway between 8 and 16 bits. So what's cool about this is that it has this very unique mechanic of being able to go in between the foregrounds and backgrounds by going onto orange platforms, which gives it like this pseudo 3D effect, which is especially resonant on the 3DS version. If you were lucky enough to get the Atooi collection like I did via limited runs, that game is included in here. And seriously, I know the 3DS 3D is a little problematic in certain scenarios. For Mutant Mudds and the other game we're going to be talking about after, Xeodrifter, it was born for this. It just looks so great. But even when you're not playing it on 3DS, if you're playing it on like PS4, Switch, PC, or any other platform, it looks very good. It's very good. So let's get into the game itself. If you've never heard of Mutant Mudds Deluxe, this game centers around a boy named Max who lives with his grandmother. One day he's playing video games, and all of a sudden these mutant mudds take over the world and start dirtying everything up, right? So Max decides to take care of business, arms himself with a water pistol, a jetpack, 3 hearts, and some very hard to reach checkpoints, and he's going to be going across 80 platforming levels where you're 3 objectives. You have to find the water sprites at the end of each level. That's the main objective. You also have to collect 100 golden diamonds. And then the third objective is to find the secret area to truly complete and unlock the full potential of the game. Now, don't be put off by the very simple visual style. Yes, it's a cute retro platformer. Yes, it looks all cuddly, but this game will demand the best of you. It may seem a little easy for the first few stages, but by the time you get to the end of that first world, it's going to be punishing. It's going to be super specific, very graceful, and this game is very deliberate. It's been programmed so well that it's one of those hardcore platformers that just expects you to play it properly, to keep dying over and over and over again till you figure out the patterns. But don't let that dissuade you, because again, the game is so well designed, so addictive, and so charming. It will just keep you coming back for more. So not only do you have 80 levels of the Mutant Mudds Deluxe, but you have this whole collection too, because you're also going to get Mutant Mudds Super Challenge, which came out later in 2016 for multiple platforms. That's an additional 40 levels built on the Mutant Mudds engine, but with even harder bosses, more enemies, and even more challenge for the super players, as they quote it. So you're going to get that in the collection. Plus, on top of that, if you had this collection, the Atooi collection, you didn't get Mud Blocks, which is a special puzzler in the Mutant Mudds universe, where essentially the Mutant Mudds are coming from the ground up, they're invading your puzzle space, and you have to drop water bombs on them. And this game can be played solo, co-op, head-to-head. Very cool to see this included. So if you're an Atooi collector and you didn't get this before, this is what you're going to need to complete that Atooi collection. And it's funny about Atooi putting this out, if you know that Mutant Mudds Deluxe and the game we're talking about next, Xeodrifter, were originally made by Renegade Kid. And this was a company that was founded by the designer of Mutant Mudds, Jules Watson, and his former partner, Greg Hargrove, who unfortunately passed away due to pancreatic cancer back in 2018. These guys originally created Renegade Kid, and they were also famous for doing 3D titles like Moon and Dementia 1 and 2 on the DS. But it was really Mutant Mudds Deluxe that put them on the map. Unfortunately, the company dissolved in 2016, and both gentlemen went their own separate ways. You had Greg Hargrove founding a company called Infinitesimo, where he took over all the rights to Renegade Kid's 3D properties, whereas Jules Watson created Atooi and took over all the rights to the 2D IPs like Mutant Mudds and the next title, Xeodrifter, we're going to get into next. So that's the Mutant Mudds collection specifically for the Switch. Again, you'll be getting a 1,500 copy print on limitedrungames.com on Tuesday, August 23rd at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. But like I said, if you miss that window, don't fret. It is going up for open pre-order on Amazon.com. Only problem is I did go to Amazon. I haven't seen a lot of details yet, so just make sure you log into Amazon, because hopefully they won't have a limited print themselves. Hopefully there will be a lot more copies available. Okay, so that's Mutant Mudds Collection. Let's get into Xeodrifter next. So, Xeodrifter is yet another 2D retro-style platformer coming from Atooi, and this will be released physically alongside Mutant Mudds Collection on Tuesday, August 23rd on Limited Run Games, and then open pre-order on Amazon. This will also be limited to 1,500 copies, and this, if you're into Mutant Mudds, you'll like this too, because it takes the Mutant Mudds engine and then puts it into a Metroidvania-style game, where the game describes you as an interstellar drifter whose rocket ship has collided with an asteroid, and now the warp function is damaged, so you're going to have to visit these 4 different planets, exploring them, unlocking different power-ups, and fighting huge bosses in an attempt to repair your ship. Now, this game is a lot shorter than Mutant Mudds. I saw on howlongtobeat.com, it can essentially be beaten about 3 to 4 hours if you're very good, but having played through a good part of it, I would almost argue that this is actually harder in some respects than Mutant Mudds. Now, it does retain a lot of the same mechanics. You can dimension shift between the foreground and background to explore different areas. Plus, you can unlock cool power-ups like turning into a submarine to explore the water levels, rocket boosters, you're able to warp between walls, but there's very little hand-holding in this. There's a lot of backtracking and forward tracking in terms of like, where do I go next? And a lot of memory. Okay, I saw this obstacle, I unlocked this power-up, so I'm gonna have to go back to this planet. But in the beginning part, you're just gonna kind of do a lot of blind exploring until you kind of figure out the rhythm of the game. And like Mutant Mudds, this game is very precise, unforgiving, doesn't have health pickups anywhere in the level, so it's about you making it to that checkpoint before your hearts run out. Otherwise, you're going to start all the way back from the beginning. So the thing is, though, you can't blame the game. The game is designed so well, both of these games, in fact, that if you mess up, it's on you. Honestly, the game is just too well designed and too fun. It's hard and frustrating, but if you put your time and just memorize and keep trying over and over, you'll eventually get it. So that's Xeodrifter along with Mutant Mudds Collection. These are both getting re-released physically on Tuesday, August 23rd via limitedrungames.com, $29.99 US for the standard versions, and I'm hoping probably the same price and hopefully more copies on Amazon.com when pre-orders open that day. So now let's get into our final game, which is going to be a retro collection. Of course, you know I love my retro collections. We're going to be talking about Ray's Arcade Chronology. Now, this retro compilation is coming to us via strictlylimitedgames.com and PlayAsia, but there is a special difference between both of them that I want to get into to make sure that you know what you're buying before you decide to plop your cash down on this compilation. And believe me, this one's going to be a treat for all you shoot 'em up or shmup fans, because this is going to represent some of the strongest shmups that came out of like the mid-90s and early 2000s out of the arcades. I already ordered my copy on PS4. I'm going to tell you right now, these are going very quick. There aren't many left. So if you're interested, you may want to hop on strictlylimitedgames.com sooner than later, because this is only available for PS4 and Switch. And these games, if you want to buy them in their physical formats on, say, PlayStation or Saturn, you're going to be ponying up some dough. So why not just spend under $100 and get them all on one collection? That's my argument anyway. So this collection contains 5 titles. We've got 1994's Ray Force, which came out in the arcades. Of course, all these are the arcade versions. Ray Force was revolutionary at the time, not only because it was pushing the capability of Taito's arcade systems to the max, like their graphics, the sound, especially the sound, was done by Taito's in-house band, Zentada, and as soon as you hear it, you'll be familiar. It's like that crazy, quirky, electro, synth pop, pulsating music that just perfectly fits a shooter and just makes you feel right at home. So you're going to get that soundtrack, but also these awesome graphics for the time. But bigger than that was its actual mechanics that were considered revolutionary in the mid-90s. The fact that it's got this quote-unquote 2-layer shooting system where not only are you using your lasers to shoot enemies in the foreground like any traditional shmup, but then inspired by Xevious, you also have a reticule in the foreground that targets enemies in the background. So it's kind of like this 2D, 3D mechanic where you're constantly shooting in front of you, but also shooting beneath you, which I find is kind of chaotic and cool, but also demands a new level of concentration, which I'm not used to. I've always wanted to play these games, but I just couldn't afford to buy them, the home ports on the PlayStation. So to be able to get their arcade versions perfectly preserved on like one disc or cart is fantastic. So I had to order it right away. You'll be getting 1994's Ray Force, which is the pixelated version of the series. Uses the old pixel art graphics, top-down style, but also some very cool use of scaling and some very trippy inter-level effects that makes it seem very seamless from level to level. You don't really get a cut screen. There's just kind of like a nice transition that gets you into the next level. And I think that really sets the tone and keeps you invested in the gameplay. On top of that, you'll get the sequel, which was 1996 Ray Storm, which also got a PlayStation port. That's included in the collection. Probably one of the more well-known titles and just gorgeous. I'm actually playing that one in the background and I just love the style of this one. Retains the same elements in addition to some new features like special weapons. And then finally, you'll get 1998's Ray Crisis, which was a prequel to Ray Force. So you get all 3 titles, but then in addition to that, you're going to get the HD version, actually the Neo HD version of Ray Storm. There actually was an old HD version back in 2010 for, I believe, Xbox Live Arcade and PS3. That one had like a 16:9 mode and a few extra features, whereas the Neo HD version, which isn't even ready yet, it's still in development, is going to retain the arcades features, but the original 4:3 aspect ratio mode. And then on top of that, you're also going to get an in-development HD version of Ray Crisis. So you've got those 5 titles, but now, here is where we get the big difference between the strictly limited version and the version you're going to see for pre-order on PlayAsia.com, which is similar in price. So first of all, on PlayAsia, you'll be able to get the standard version for PS4 or Switch. And the release date, of course, is March the 9th, 2023, so you can pre-order those now. You'll get all 5 games included, but then you'll get a DLC voucher for Our Gear. Now, Our Gear is one of those mythical vaporware titles. It was actually a canceled sequel to Ray Force. So it's kind of known in colloquial terms as Ray Force 1.5. There's only one level in existence, like a prototype, but you'll get a download code to get that. Whereas if you go to Strictly Limited Games and pay $50.99, you'll get all 5 games plus Our Gear hardwired into the disc or the cart, depending on which platform you get. So overall, I'm going to say the strictly limited version is way better value because you'll be able to preserve our gear. But that would also explain why it's going so quickly. And there's like, I think like 20% of the PS4 standard copies left. So you'll want to act fast. But even if you miss out on the standard copies, there are a lot more of the collectors and pixel frame versions. So for example, there's a pixel frame version of each console release for $81.99, which includes the game and a pixel frame art piece. And then, of course, there's the collector's versions for $131.99, where you get a whole bunch of extra goodies like a live recording of Zentada doing the soundtrack. You get some posters, flyers, and inserts, so a lot of cool stuff. But if you can get your hands on that cheaper standard version, I highly recommend it because these games are very expensive to get on their own, and if you can get them all in one collection, wow, what a tremendous value, especially for these groundbreaking shooters that were considered at the top of their game when they came out. So I'm really excited about getting mine. This has been a jam-packed episode, first episode of the Solar Report. Hope you like what we did with this. We'll be back again next week with some more great goodness. You've been watching episode 22 of The Collecting Confidant with your host, GunstarHero. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Later, Game Chasers, and peace.